I think that is an interesting experience which I would recommend to all of my colleagues. Sometimes you have to step down and invite other communities to take over your building, take over your program, and organize it along their way. So I've been working within the field of music and particularly jazz since the second half of the 80s. As I was working in an art center, Vooruit in Ghent in Belgium, as a music programmer for 25 years. And now I'm the artistic director of a music venue in that same city called Handelsbeurs. And it's a beautiful old place, and we organize around about 120 concerts a year, doing productions, doing festivals on different sorts of music. We kind of regard ourselves as a main stage for the jazz music of that city, but we also have pop and rock, world music, and other kinds of music. And we started, which is really important, a series for younger audiences, for young people, for kids, but still the same adult music. So it's not small music, it's the big music for small children. Well, I went first to Istanbul. I'd never been to Istanbul. It was during a Europe Jazz Network General Assembly, and I discovered the scene, and Mehmet, the late Mehmet Ulu, was kind of my guide into the music scene. Mehmet had a club, Babylon in Istanbul. There was a Double Moon Records, a label, and I was completely surprised by that scene. And Ghent, the city where I come from and where the venue is, has an important migration, Turkish migration. There's a lot of Turkish people or people with a Turkish descendants living in Ghent. So I thought it would be interesting because there's not a lot of that Turkish underground music presented in Ghent. So I had the idea of starting a Turkish festival, which we call the Istanbul Express Festival. And I involved immediately a partner in Ghent, which is a cultural center focusing on all those cultural minorities living in the city and which have a good connection with the Turkish community. But the first festival I made a program by myself and had some really hardcore improvised music next to more traditional music. And with the traditional music, we reached out for some of the Turkish audiences living in our city. For the more hardcore underground music, I had a white audience only. The next edition, I started working with the curator. I started working with a curator, the programmer of our partner organization, which is called the Centrale. He comes from Istanbul, knows the scene very well, and it was during my relationship with Attila, is his name. He told me, well, if you want to reach out for the Turkish community, you will have to take into account the music they love and the music they listen to. And it's of course interesting to bring a hardcore Turkish jazz band from Istanbul, but they don't know that music and they will not come. So it was a very interesting process for me to learn how to reach that audience. And if you want to reach that audience, you have to take into account the music they listen to through the satellite antennas. They listen to they watch Turkish television. So we brought in pop artists, Turkish pop artists, and we started having a very good mix of audiences and really reaching to that Turkish community and establishing now a long-term relationship. We have already had 10 editions of the festival, and it's become a really established festival, really well respected. And for the Turkish community to come to our venue has become something really normal. They dance, they feast, and the way they experience music is so much more lively than the way we Northerners are kind of reserved, and they're very festive in their appreciation of the music. So it's been really well It's been a great experience, but for me especially to learn how to work with cultural diversity and still with challenging music. So that's been a really important process. I started knowing that we as a programmer, artistic programmer in a venue, sometimes we always think like, okay, we have to be the forefront, it's our program and it's the musicians we cherish. But if you want to reach out to different communities, you have to be prepared to step down from that position, step down from the stage and invite curators which have a direct link with that community to do the program and kind of take over your venue. And that is really important. And if you do that, then the people will come, and of course that curator knows the music the best. He can do a much more better job than I can, or she. We also have female curators doing that job. So that I think that is an interesting experience which I would recommend to all of my colleagues. Sometimes you have to step down and invite other communities to take over your building, take over your program, and organize it along their way. Some of the events we organize also have kind of a culinary aspect. They invite cooks from the communities to cook and they have a dinner before the concert starts. And it creates a completely different and much more relaxing and much more vivid environment for the music. Up to now, it's been mostly organizations which have been involved within the musical scene. For example, we do a festival with Roma musicians, and the curator is a musician from the Roma community who knows the Roma community well. So it's always, well, if it's a cultural organization, it's always more or less linked to the musical aspect within that community. We haven't done yet anything which is theater or performance, because there are other venues in town who can take care of that aspect of the arts. So ours is really the vocation of the Handelsbeurs is really music. So if we do those partnerships, it's with musical organizations. Now we're going to invite a youth club with a lot of hip-hop musicians, and it's going to be the same thing. It's all young people, and we say, okay, take over the venue, make your own posters, just do whatever you would do in your own space. But we have the privilege that we have a professional team and professional PA system. Everything is kind of an upgrade for them. In their youth club, they work with material which is less professional than we can have. And for them, it's really interesting to work within that infrastructure, because sometimes they do things which are of great value and which they can never show in the same way that they could be shown in a professional space with a professional surrounding. So it's a thing we're developing step by step in looking for new partnerships and trying to open up our building and our function towards those communities. It is it's a Creative Europe project, but actually the start of it was because we're organizing a workshop together with a theater group in Ghent. It's also space, but it's also a production company who bring theater and make theater for young audiences. And we do a workshop in a neighborhood which is a kind of deprived neighborhood with children, only children from a migrant background, aged 8 to 12. And they had this theater workshop, and I wanted to do a music workshop there. And we engaged some professional musicians to work with the children, and it's been an intense, very intense process, because these children, they're not used to participate in cultural events. Their background is different, the way they approach it is different. It's a post-school event, so it starts like at 5 o'clock in the evening until 7. Sometimes they're tired. The attention span is very short. So as a musician, you have to use all the skills you have to get their attention and to have that, it lasts for 1.5 hours, to keep that going. And they develop new methods to make this as exciting as possible. And from that, we wanted to learn are there other experiences in Europe with our partners within the European Jazz Network? So we made a call out to everybody and said, okay, we want to create a project to exchange expertise, and that project is called Playground and has now received money from the European Community. And we have 5 partners, all different projects. There is the East Norwegian Music Center, who is working mainly with professional musicians and refugees. There is the partner TAM in Italy, working with children because of the earthquake that happened a couple of years ago. Complete villages got wiped out, and now they've created these kind of container villages which have no social cohesion whatsoever. So these kids don't have a square to play, or it's like a very artificial neighborhood. And through the music, they try to create a more social bond with those kids. There is Cluj in Romania, Jazz in the Park Festival, which work with Roma children. And there is Banlieue Bleue in Paris, which is a famous organization which has a long-lasting experience in working in the banlieues, the suburbs of Paris, with youngsters from different cultural minorities. And then Handelsbeurs with our experience with that workshop. It's different experiences, and we put that expertise together, create, organize meetings to talk about methodology, to talk about the practices we have, but also open that up to EGN, but also other organizations, bigger organizations. There is, for example, an organization, Social Impact of Making Music, which is more a research organization on an institutional level, which is a partnership. And there's academics, and we'll organize 2 conferences, main conferences, one in Paris and one in Ghent. And in the meanwhile, we'll having, now it's been all online, unfortunately, having small meetings with musicians and pedagogues on how we can approach music as a method to help children within a certain social context and community. It's not a common thing, and there is not, for me, there's not enough professional musicians already involved in that. It used to be organized on a very too much educational level. Because I think the most important thing, especially if you're talking about kids with migrant backgrounds, is that they can just enjoy themselves through music. They don't necessarily have to learn music or learn to play an instrument. They just have to participate in an event which makes them happy and gives them kind of resilience and some self-esteem. That's the most important thing, but mostly that they just play together, learn to respect each other, and music is a kind of how do you call this? A carrier to do that. It could be theater, it could be music, it could be visual arts, but music is an easy one because there's no language involved. It's something which everybody has some rhythm, everybody has a background in music, young people listen to music. So as a teacher, as a musician, if you know a bit all these elements and you can play with that, but you need to be a really good musician and pedagogue to do that. So you don't need to be a teacher, you need to be somebody who has a practice and be able to work with those kids. So there is more and more people who are working in those fields. There is, for example, a clarinet player who is working in a neighborhood with Roma children, but mixing it with other amateur musicians, and it's all age groups, and this seems to work really, really well. So there's more and more attention to that, but for me, we still have to go away. We still have to go a long way because there needs to be more done to make this more fruitful, and it's an important task.